Chapter 20 Hello, Iceman by Justin Rosales. During my last couple of years at Penn State University, I worked in a research lab that focused on facial expressions and human emotion. As a research assistant, my job was to run participants through experiments. On December 2nd, 2009, in between running participants, I rewatched old YouTube videos of the Iceman. Eventually, I came across a strange video that consisted of a slideshow of pictures that were taken using an infrared camera. The video was short and only had a few pictures of the Iceman stretching in front of a large group of people, and I could tell from the white color emanating from his body that he was generating a lot of heat. I had seen the video before, but I only watched the first 10 seconds of it. This time I decided to let it play all the way through, and during the last 5 seconds of the video, the Iceman's website flashed across the screen, which was at the time www.innerfire.nl. I didn't know he had a website, and became very intrigued. I checked out the website and found a small section with contact information, and listed in the contacts was Wim's email address. I was ecstatic. I had always wanted the opportunity to talk to the Iceman, and now it seemed possible. Of course, I was extremely doubtful that he would reply. I thought he would never get back to me, being that he was a really famous individual and probably very busy. Even though I was extremely doubtful, I had a lot of faith. I believed that if I were meant to speak to the Iceman, he would get my email and send one back. If nothing happened, my email was left unread, I would move on from Tumo forever. I know, very drastic. I felt that this was my last chance to learn how to do it properly, to understand what it was like to be able to control my body temperature, like the Iceman. So here's what I sent him. Hello, Mr. Hof. My name is Justin Rosales. I'm a student at Penn State University, which is in Pennsylvania. And well, I really don't know how to make this formal, but it's an interesting topic and I'd like to be as open as possible. My friend and I have been researching a G-Tumo, also known as Tumo, for a while, and I personally traveled to Berkeley, California to find out more information about Tumo, to try to discover more about this inner fire. I found a workshop, and the man that led the workshop goes by the name of Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche. It was a weekend seminar that lasted about 4 days. However, they met several times during the year to try to teach this art. Personally, I only made it to the last session because I was unaware of the seminar until a few weeks ago. Anyways, they went over the 9 breathing techniques, the warm-ups for the chakras, the Tsa Lung, the Bar Lung, and the Drak Lung. I feel that there are different ways to perform Tumo. I have already read a book called Inner Fire, and the techniques were a bit different from ones taught at the workshop. Mr. Hof, I'm very interested in mastering the art of Tumo. Of course, my friend and I are Westerners, and based on the research that I've done, the Tibetans aren't really friendly when it comes to sharing Tumo with people in the Western culture. I've heard them say they put everything in the wrong context. They have no imagination, and it will not work. But to be honest, sir, my friend and I are very determined and open-minded. We are really interested in this idea and really want to try to make this work for ourselves. The reason I'm emailing you, sir, is that you can do something that I haven't seen in the Tibetan research that I performed. Despite all the articles that I've come across, I have yet to see anyone stand up or even run while performing Jitumo other than you. So I was wondering, if you were planning on doing any workshops anytime soon to teach your method of Tumo, my friend and I would love to find a way to meet up with you to learn. We are more than interested in your work, your way of life, and everything. We wouldn't document this in any papers or anything like that. We aren't with the news. We are 2 students that are very interested in bettering ourselves to learn, understand, and gain knowledge. We just want to improve. Sir, we'd really appreciate any response to this email, even being turned down. We admire that you are someone that isn't with Tibetan culture yet has mastered this art of Tumo. Thank you very much. Justin Rosales, Penn State University. After sending the email, I returned to my lab work. My friends in the lab knew about my research in California, and they also knew about my interest in the Iceman. I told Anthony, the graduate student that I worked for, that I sent the Iceman an email. I also mentioned my doubt of not getting a response. 10 minutes after sending the email, I received this. Dear Justin, there are no secrets. Everyone, every mind can understand the concepts, especially when it is taken with an open heart. I will get back to you. In the meantime, try to learn by listening to the lecture that I did in New York after performing in the streets of Manhattan. Search for the Google video, Mystic Fire. Greetings, Wim Hof. After reading this email, I said in a loud, enthusiastic voice, yes! Anthony looked up from his desk and asked me, what happened? I told him the Iceman had just responded. I was clueless as to which video Wim was talking about. I thought I'd already seen them all. I didn't know what Mystic Fire was, so I used Google to search the words Mystic Fire, Iceman, and Wim Hof. A new result popped up, one that I hadn't seen before. The video starts out with a man named Kenneth Kamler describing what typically happens to somebody when they are exposed to the cold. Sound familiar? In his presentation, he transitions to how Wim's body reacts differently to the cold. He then offers his theories of how it is possible. Afterward, Wim is called on stage and asked to speak. Wim begins by telling the audience, science can only go so far. We are humans, and humans can go beyond science. Wim then goes into a long explanation of what he's done in the past and what he plans to do in the future. Near the end of the video, Wim says that he has a different philosophy now. He mentions that he has done a considerable amount of record breaking and has achieved many goals. Now, he wants to teach others what he has learned. He wants to help the unwise understand what he's experienced so that they can experience it too. His new goal was to begin sharing the opportunity to become the Iceman with the world. After seeing the video of Wim, I felt that I understood him on a deeper level. I saw who he was, beyond the celebrity that the television made him out to be. I saw him as someone who was willing to do whatever it takes to change the world. He was a future version of who Jarrett and I hoped that we would become. Wim achieved the impossible and was actively looking to do more. I emailed the link to Jarrett and asked him to call me after he watched it. The new information re-inspired me to continue my quest for knowledge and understanding. My laptop told me that the temperature outside was currently 32 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 0 degrees Celsius. I wanted to immerse myself in my research and begin to gain experience with the cold, so I took off my jacket, packed up my things, and walked outside. It was a 20-minute walk to my apartment from where I was, and my t-shirt didn't do much to protect me from the cold. A few seconds after walking outside, I could feel the goosebumps popping up all over my body. Shivers rolled up my spine, and I could see my breath each time I exhaled. It was cold, and the 15-mile-an-hour winds, which is 24.1 kilometers per hour, those winds weren't helping. With each gust, I felt as if someone or something was sucking the heat from my body. After 10 minutes of walking outside, I lost all feeling in my fingertips. My fingers felt like rocks when they rubbed together as I formed fists. I was afraid that I was doing serious damage to my body and I would have to deal with the consequences later. As I continued my walk home, I received a lot of attention from people. There were a lot of glares, raised eyebrows, and open mouths. Almost everyone stared. At first, I was really self-conscious, but then I understood that what I was doing was going to be bizarre to most people. This is why Wim is so famous. Most people view what he does as a circus act because they can't imagine doing it themselves. When I finally reached my house, I slowly managed to pull my keys out of my pocket. It was incredibly hard to unlock the door as I fumbled through each key with numbed hands. Eventually, the lock turned, and I pushed the door open. As I walked in, the hot air from my home engulfed my frozen hands. They began to sting. It felt as if the tips of several hundred knives were positioned around my hands and someone was applying pressure to all of them at once. It was unbearable. I felt dizzy, so I went to my bedroom and lay down. I closed my eyes and tried to think the pain away. It wasn't until about 20 minutes later when I started to feel some relief. Eventually, the pain dulled and faded away completely. Luckily, it appeared as if no permanent damage was done to my hands. My fear of frostbite had left me once I regained the feeling back in my fingertips. That night, I received a call from Jarrett. We talked about how awesome the video was, and he told me he had enjoyed seeing this different side of Wim. Where the Discovery Channel's video of Wim running a half marathon made him seem superhuman, Wim's interview made him look more normal. You could easily tell he was a regular guy that just wanted to help people. That's what Jarrett and I loved about Wim, that he was willing to make sacrifices to show people their true potential. At one point during our conversation, Jarrett and I agreed that Wim was taking the world in a new direction. He was looking for ways to help people live more efficiently. And most of all, Wim seemed selfless, humble, and more than willing to teach people his technique. I described to Jarrett that walk home that I took earlier that day and how painful it had been. I told him that I thought the key to unlocking the Iceman's ability was to condition our bodies through direct exposure. And I assumed that over time, our bodies would adapt to the harsh conditions. And speaking of pain, I decided not to try any more cold exposures until I spoke with Wim again. I didn't want to do any damage to my body and ruin my chances of ever learning to control its temperature. The following day, I received an email from Wim explaining how the cold is a hard but righteous teacher. He told me that we, as humans, lost our natural ability to adapt to the cold over time. To get it back, we needed to naturally adapt through progressive exposure. In response, I sent him the following with my frigid walk home in mind. Thank you, Wim. All of your thoughts are very enlightening and good to hear. It makes sense and does feel natural. My one question is, as I expose myself, how do I know when to stop? I can accept the cold and my body feels fine. However, when outside in t-shirt and shorts, my fingers start to hurt and then burn and then eventually lose feeling. At what point should I stop? Or should I just wear gloves? Though if I do wear gloves, does it take away my ability to adjust? I'm sorry for my misunderstanding, but I'm just trying to do it as accurately as possible so I don't hurt myself. Thank you for your continual support and advice. My friend and I are happy to be learning and regaining the natural mechanisms. Justin Rosales. To which he replied, Hi, Justin. In the beginning, you will feel the cold. Your fingers and toes will react. I am a rock climber who climbs without gear. I need to have good control and good blood circulation in my fingertips to hold on. Here is what helped me train my hands. Try it out yourself. Find a rock or cold item, touch it, and let the fingers react until it does not feel good anymore. Then, remove yourself from the cold and wait a couple of minutes. This is when the veins in your hands are opening up again, the natural way, and make it possible, in my case, to climb for hours on ice cold rocks. It feels great. Once again, it is all natural, but you have to find out through experience. I helped many people heal their feet's reaction to the cold by having them walk barefoot in the snow for a quarter of a mile with the right mental attitude. After that, they didn't have any more problems with cold feet. The secret is that their veins were too small, restricting blood flow. With exposure, you can condition the veins to become larger and allow more warm blood to reach your extremities. It is not hocus pocus. You can condition the veins by exposing them to extreme colds. When you first enter the cold, the veins and arteries will constrict, restricting blood flow immensely. After they're conditioned, the veins and arteries open back up again while in the cold, and they can continue to pump warm blood to exposed parts of your feet. This increases the circumference of the walls of both the veins and the arteries. It's all natural. Simple. Wim. This was the first time it was beginning to make sense to me. Understanding that there was some science behind the ability made it seem more achievable. I viewed it as if I was going to train a muscle or run a race, and each time pushing progressively farther. I didn't have any cold slabs of rock available, so I'd have to be creative. And regardless, I was ready to start training.